The decree had already been written. Not on stone. Not on any scroll a human hand could ever hold. It was written in the dark beneath the mountains, in the chambers where the teachers of forbidden things were being dragged down into chains, and where their voices, for the first time in living memory, finally went silent. But the world above them did not go silent. The world was still groaning under the weight of what those teachers left behind. Their children. Tens of thousands of them. Colossal. Starving. A whole generation of hybrid giants who woke one gray morning to a truth more terrifying than any army marching against them. The grain was gone. The herds were gone. The forests had been stripped down to bare soil. And the sky that had once whispered to their fathers had fallen completely, utterly quiet. There was no one left to feed them. So they turned, and they looked at each other. This is one of the strangest stories the ancient world ever dared to write down. You will not find it in most copies of scripture sitting on shelves today. It survives somewhere else in a banned book called First Enoch, and in brittle sheets of Aramaic that spent 2,000 years buried in caves above the Dead Sea. And what those fragments describe is not a clean war between heroes and monsters. It is something far harder to look at. It is a civilization devouring itself. Because here is what the old text is really asking us to confront. The judgment that ended the age of the giants did not come down as fire from heaven. No angel swept across the plain with a flaming sword. According to the tradition, the Creator did something far quieter and far colder. He simply lifted his hand. He took away the one thing that had been holding these creatures back from one another. And then he let their own hunger finish the work he had started. No thunder. Just hunger. To understand what happened on those plains, you have to start with a single line. One command, preserved in the 10th chapter of the book of Enoch. In the text, the Creator turns to the Archangel Gabriel. And what he hands him is not a message of mercy. It is an order of extermination. Go against the bastards and the reprobates. He says, go against the children of the watchers and send them one against the other. Let them destroy each other in mutual slaughter. For a length of days, the line ends, they shall not have. Hear that again slowly. He does not say he will destroy them. He says they will destroy each other. The sentence is not an execution. It is something stranger than that. The Creator looks at the most powerful beings ever to walk the earth, creatures who could level a town just by walking through it, and he decides they are not worth a single bolt of lightning. He will not raise a hand against them directly. He will simply point them inward, and step back. It is, when you really weigh it, the most efficient verdict ever passed. And the most humiliating one. There is no glory in it for them. No final stand. No enemy worthy of the name. They will not fall to heaven, or to mankind, or to anything outside themselves. They will fall to each other, which is to say, they will fall to what they already were. Now in this part matters more than people usually admit. I want to be honest with you about how we even know any of this. Because the way I just told it to you was smooth. Clean. cinematic. And the truth on the ground is nothing like that. What we actually have is wreckage. The fullest version of this story survived only in an old Ethiopic translation, a copy of a copy of a copy, carried across centuries and languages long after the original was lost. And sitting beside it are the Qumran fragments, torn scraps of leather, some no bigger than your hand, recovered from the caves at the Dead Sea. One of them carries the catalog number 4Q531, and it belongs to a shattered work that scholars now call the Book of Giants, a text that once told this exact war from the inside, from the giants' own point of view. But these are not a war report. There is no map, no clean timeline, no tidy list of who fell, and where, and when. What survives is a mosaic with half its tiles missing. Lines snap off in the middle of a thought. Names rise up out of the leather and then disappear into a tear. Whole scenes exist now only as 3 or 4 readable words, floating in a field of damage. The fragments even preserve a handful of the names. Ohia, Haya, Mahaway. Individual giants, with individual fates, and around almost every one of them, the parchment is broken right where the story was about to get interesting. So when this gets told, when I tell it to you now, I need you to hold 2 things at once. We are not reading history the way you read a newspaper. We are reading shadows on a wall. We are reconstructing the largest massacre the ancient imagination could ever conceive. And we are doing it from its echoes. And yet, even in pieces, the shape of the thing is unmistakable. The command was given. These beings would not be struck down from the outside. They would be turned inward. They were sentenced to become their own executioners. So the verdict is set. But a verdict is just words on the wind until something makes it move. The texts give us that something. And the reason they give is so strangely modern that it stops you cold. It was not pride that turned the giants on each other first. It was the food running out. Go back a few chapters in Enoch, to the 7th, and you find the engine of the whole catastrophe laid out in just a few lines. The giants, the text says, consumed everything the people had, every acquisition of mankind. And when the people could no longer feed them, when there was simply nothing left to bring, the giants turned on the people themselves. Then they turned on the birds, and the beasts, and the things that crawl, and the fish in the water. And at the very end, the text says, they began to devour one another's flesh, and to drink the blood. That is the staircase down into the dark. And it has steps. Watch them. In the beginning, the giants take only the surplus, the extra grain, the spare cattle. The harvest a village can lose and still survive. But a creature 3 times the height of a man does not eat the way a man eats. One of them, in a single season, can empty an entire region. So the surplus goes first. Then they come for the seed grain, the grain that was meant for next year. Then the breeding herds. And once you have eaten the animals you needed to make more animals, there is no next year anymore. There is only now. And now is always hungry. This is the thing the ancient writers understood in their bones, thousands of years before anyone had a word for it. When something grows larger than the world that has to carry it, the world does not gently push back. It buckles. And the thing on top buckles with it, only slower and louder, and it drags everything else down on the way. So the giants ate the people who had been feeding them. They emptied the wild, the herds, the flocks, the birds, the fish in the rivers. And then one morning, somewhere out on those endless plains, one of them looked across at his own kind, at another colossus, still standing, still carrying meat on his bones. And he understood, in a way that needed no words, that there was only one source of food left anywhere in the world. No decree was needed for that thought. The hunger wrote it on its own. And so the wars began. I want you to set aside, completely, the picture you might be carrying. The Hollywood picture. There are no beams of light here. No glowing weapons. No magic. The texts give us nothing supernatural in the fighting itself, and neither will I. What they leave us instead is something heavier, and far more real. Bronze, iron, stone. Picture two armies of giants meeting on open ground. The earth itself flinches beneath them. Every footfall is a small earthquake. The dust comes up so thick that whole ranks vanish into a brown fog of their own making. They carry blades the length of a fallen tree, hammered out of dull metal, notched and bent from use. They carry slabs of rock torn straight off a quarry wall. And when they finally collide, there is no clean ring of sword on sword. There is the sound of mass hitting mass, a deep, grinding, sickening impact that you would feel inside your own chest from a mile away. And here's the worst part. These creatures do not die quickly. They are too large, too strong, built from a union that was never meant to happen, carrying more life in them than any natural thing should. A wound that would end a man is, for one of them, only the opening of a very long afternoon. So the fighting does not end in moments. It grinds. It drags on through the daylight. The plains turn dark and soft underfoot, and not with rain. Not yet. With something else. Above it all, the cities they had built begin to come apart. The Cyclopean cities raised from blocks of stone no human crew could ever have lifted. The proof and the boast of the hybrid age. Walls that had stood for generations crack and topple. Not under siege engines. Under the weight of giants being thrown against them. The monuments of their power become the rubble they die on. The proof that they had ruled the earth becomes the gravel where they bleed out into it. There is something else in the book of giants, though. Something stranger than the fighting. Buried in those Aramaic fragments are dreams. The giants, it seems, had been having visions. In the surviving lines, two of them, the ones the text names Ahya and High, awake from nightmares they cannot shake off. One sees a tablet rising out of the water. One sees a garden, lush and immense, and then watches as the whole of it is wiped out, the trees torn up by the roots, everything drowned, until only a handful of things are left standing. They are so shaken by it that they send one of their own, a giant the fragments call Mahaway, flying off across the world to find the one man who might be able to explain it. to find Enoch. Take in what that means. Even in the middle of all their power, even as they ruled the earth and emptied it, some part of these creatures already knew. The dreams were a warning. And on some level, they understood the warning. They simply did not stop. They asked what the vision meant, and then they went on eating anyway. That is not a monster's story. That is something far more human, and far more uncomfortable than that. To be shown your own ending clearly, in advance, and to walk straight into it regardless. One thought stays with me, every time I read these fragments. The giants were not destroyed because they were weak. They were destroyed because they were strong. Too strong for a world with limits. Their strength was never balanced by anything, no restraint, no ceiling, no sense that tomorrow had to be paid for in the present. And a power with no ceiling does not rise forever. It rises until it runs out of world. And then it turns on itself, and starts eating, just to keep going one more day. That was the trap built into them from the very first morning. Not a curse spoken over their heads. A flaw poured into their making. They were always going to end like this. Now stop. Stop hearing the battle. Pull yourself up out of the noise, up off the bleeding plains, up the slopes of the mountains that ring the valley. Because there is another part of this story unfolding up there. And almost no one ever tells it. It is the part that, the first time you really understand it, changes everything that came before. Up on those heights, the fathers were watching. Go back to the 10th chapter of Enoch, the same chapter that ordered the slaughter. Down below, a few lines on, the Creator gives a second command. This time to the Archangel Michael. Go, he says, and bind the leaders of the Watchers. The very ones who started all of this. The ones who came down, and took human wives, and taught humanity the things it was never meant to know. Bind them in the valleys of the earth. Hold them there until the day of judgment. But there is a condition buried in that command. A small, terrible clause. And it is the easiest thing in the world to read straight past it. He tells Michael to wait. Bind them, the text says, but only after their sons have slain one another. Only after they have seen the destruction of their beloved ones. There is a cruelty in it almost too precise to be an accident. The fathers are not allowed to die first. They are not allowed to look away. Before the chains close over them for 70 generations of darkness, they are made to stand on the mountainside and watch their children kill each other in the valley below. I have spent a long time with that single sentence. And the more I study that one line, the more convinced I am that it is the real heart of this entire story. Not the war. The watching. Imagine it for a moment. You are one of the Watchers. You crossed a line no one in your order had ever crossed, to come down into this world. You did it partly out of desire, but also, if the texts are being honest with us, out of something a lot like love. You built a life here. You had children. And your children were not ordinary children. They were giants. Magnificent and monstrous, the most powerful beings the world had ever seen. Everything you taught them, they surpassed. Everything you gave them, they made larger than you could have dreamed. And now you are standing on a mountainside, your power stripped away, your hands already half in chains, and you are watching every single one of them die. Not at the hands of an enemy you could rage against. At the hands of each other. You watch your sons tear into your sons. You watch the legacy you broke every law of heaven to build pull itself apart in the mud. And there is nothing you can do. You cannot fight. You cannot reach them. You cannot save even one. And you cannot even close your eyes, because the command is that you must see it. All of it. To the end. And remember what kind of dying this is. Down in the valley, the giants do not fall the way men fall. We said it already, a wound that would end a man is, for them, only the start of a very long afternoon. So the death takes hours. Which means the watching takes hours too. A father on that mountain does not catch a single glimpse of his son going down and have it be over. He watches it arrive, slowly, from a long way off. He sees it coming. And he can do nothing but track it, all the way in. This is what the ancient writers understood about real punishment. The worst sentence is not pain. Pain ends. Pain, eventually, goes numb. The worst sentence is helplessness. Being forced to watch the thing you love most destroy itself, and being made to understand, in that exact moment, that you are the reason it is happening. Because that is the second blade, hidden in this scene. And it is sharper than the first. The watchers are not innocent men grieving a tragedy. They are the cause of it. The hunger that is ripping their children apart was poured into those children by the union the watchers chose. The flaw was theirs. The crossing of the line was theirs. So as they watch, they are not only losing their sons, they are watching the precise shape of their own sin, played out at full scale, in the only currency that could ever make them truly feel it. And there is a detail in the wider tradition that makes the whole thing heavier still. The watchers, it is said, had wanted one thing for their offspring above all else. Length of days. Long life. Maybe something close to the endless life the angels themselves had always known. They wanted their children to outlast the world itself. And the verdict given to Gabriel answered that wish with one short, brutal line. For length of days they shall not have. The fathers reached for eternity for their sons. And the universe handed them the exact opposite and then made them watch it land. Listen to the difference in the two places. The valley roars. The mountainside is silent. Down below, there is screaming, and impact, and the long collapse of an entire race. Up above, there is only the sound of the wind, and the breathing of beings who are not allowed to look away. And in that gap in the space between the screaming and the silence sits the truth this story is really trying to make you feel. Power does not protect you from grief. Knowledge does not protect you from grief. The watchers had both. More of each than any human being would ever hold. And in the end, all of it bought them nothing but a clearer, sharper, more complete view of the wreckage. They got to watch. That was the whole sentence. By now the plains have gone quiet in patches. Not peaceful. Quiet the way a body goes quiet. Whole armies of giants lie where they fell, vast gray shapes cooling in the churned and broken earth. A few are still standing maimed, exhausted, swaying on their feet. The last of a generation, surrounded by the ruins of the cities their own kind had built, breathing hard in air that has suddenly started to feel different. Because something has changed above them. The sky has been turning all day, and they were far too busy dying to notice. But it is impossible to ignore now. The clouds have come down low, heavy, swollen, the color of cooling iron. The light has gone strange, thick and gray, the sun reduced to a dull smear somewhere behind all that murk. The wind moving across the plain is colder than it should be. And it is carrying a smell the world has never quite had before. And then it happens. One drop. A single drop of water falls out of that iron sky and lands in the dust. It is the smallest thing in this entire story. After the slaughter. After the falling cities. After armies of titans grinding each other into the mud all day long, one drop of rain. And yet, if you understand how the ancient world actually thought, you understand that this single drop is the loudest sound in the whole account. Louder than the war. Because the people who told this story did not see rain the way you and I see rain. To us, rain is weather. It is an inconvenience. You check a forecast. You grab an umbrella. You complain about the drive home. We have stripped it of nearly everything it once meant. But to the ancient mind, water did not simply fall. It was released. Above the sky, they believed, there was water held back, restrained, kept in its place by the same divine order that kept the sea from swallowing the dry land. And the rain of the great flood was never described as a storm rolling in off the horizon. It was described as something being unlocked. The windows of heaven were opened. The fountains of the great deep were broken up. Those are not the words of a weather report. Those are the words of a seal being broken. So when that first drop strikes the dust, it is not the start of bad weather. It is the start of an undoing. The barrier that had separated the waters above from the world, below the restraint that had been holding all of creation inside its safe, dry order has just been let go. And do you see the pattern? It is the same act. Twice. First the hand lifts off the giants, and they consume each other. Then the hand lifts off the waters, and they come for everything that is left. The story is rhyming with itself. The same mechanism of judgment, scaled up from a single race to the entire surface of the world. Restrained, removed. And nature, finishing the sentence. And there is one more thing about that first drop. Something the texts press on. Quietly, if you are listening for it. It is the wrong kind of rain. Rain is supposed to bring life. It feeds the seed. It fills the river. It is the oldest symbol of mercy the human race has ever had, the sky giving something back to the ground. But this rain gives nothing. It is freezing. It is heavy. It falls without any wind to soften it, straight down, as if the whole sky has simply gone slack and let go. The drops do not soak gently into the soil. They strike the cracked, dried ground and just sit there, beating on a surface too hard and too dead to drink them in. Watch what the water does first. It does not water the fields. There are no fields anymore. It runs across the stone. It finds the great cyclopean walls, the ones toppled and scattered across the battlefield, and it begins to wash them, to rinse the dark stains off the fallen blocks, to carry the blood of the giants down into the cracks, and away. The first act of the flood is not to drown anything. It is to clean, to erase. The rain moves over the battlefield like a hand wiping a slate. And everywhere it passes, the evidence of the war begins, slowly, to disappear. That is the moment the verdict crosses over. For chapters now, this judgment had been an underground thing. The watchers dragged down into the deep. The sentence written and sealed in chambers no human being would ever see. But here, with the first drop, the judgment surfaces. It steps up out of the dark beneath the mountains and into the open air, into the daylight, onto the skin of the world. What began below is now happening above. And there is no putting it back in the ground. And it does not stay a single drop for long. A second one falls. Then 100. Then the sky simply opens, all at once, and the rain comes down in sheets so dense that the far edge of the plain disappears behind a moving wall of gray. The dust that hung over the battlefield all day is beaten flat in minutes. The cracked ground that could not drink the first drops begins to shine, then to pool, then to move. Thin sheets of water start sliding across the low places, carrying ash and blood and the small wreckage of an entire civilization down toward the valleys. The world is being rinsed. And it is happening faster now than anything alive could follow. The surviving giants feel it land on them. Cold, and strange, and final. Some of them the tradition seems to hint understand exactly what it is. They have seen enough this day to know that this is not a passing shower. So they stand there, among the bones of their brothers and the rubble of their cities, and they let the freezing water run down their gray, cracked skin. And for the first time, perhaps, the rage drains out of them, and something else moves in to take its place. Not fear. Something quieter than fear. Recognition. The world that made them is being unmade. And they are standing in the first cold inch of it. And then, strangely, there is peace. It arrives the way peace always seems to arrive in these old accounts, not as a reward, but as an absence. The battle is simply over. There is no one left with the strength to lift a weapon, and nothing left worth lifting one for. The grinding, the impacts, the long low screams of dying titans, all of it fades out. And into the space where that sound used to be, one new sound moves in, and fills everything. The hiss of the rain. It is steady now. Patient. It is in no hurry at all. It falls on the dead and the dying alike, on the shattered walls and the half-buried swords, on the footprints of giants that are slowly filling with dark, still water. The plains that shook all day long are quiet at last. And the only voice left in the entire world is the soft, unbroken whisper of water meeting earth, a sound that does not stop, and will not stop, for 40 days, This is the end of the age of giants. Not with a roar. With a hiss. It is the quiet that gets to me. We expect the end of something this enormous to be loud. And for a while, it was. But the real ending, the actual last note of it, is almost gentle. A soaked plain. A gray sky. Water finding every low place and beginning, with no urgency whatsoever, to rise. The most powerful beings the world had ever produced are gone. And the world barely seems to notice they were ever here. It just keeps getting wet. And that, maybe, is the final and the hardest idea this ancient story leaves in our hands. That the things we build to last forever, the empires, the legacies, the great stone proof that we mattered, can be erased by something as ordinary as rain. Not destroyed in some final battle worthy of them. Just washed away. Quietly. As though they were never really the point. So let me leave you with a question I cannot fully answer myself. So tell me in the comments honestly. When a civilization is built to consume more than its world can ever provide, when its appetite grows larger than the ground it is standing on, is its collapse a punishment, handed down from somewhere above? Or is it something simpler and colder than that? Is it just the natural math of hunger, finally catching up with reality? There is no right answer here. I genuinely want to know how you see it. Let me know down below. And if you want to step past this plane, past the bodies and the broken cities, and walk straight into the roaring center of the storm itself. If you want to witness the final, suffocating hours of the ark, and watch the entire ancient world vanish beneath the black water, then stay close to this channel. There is so much more still buried here. Still waiting to be uncovered. The windows of heaven are open now. And the water is still rising.
Enter the realm of divine secrets. Welcome to Bible Confidential.